Thank you. Nirmala ji, we are truly delighted and honored and overwhelmed and happy and extremely proud that you have graced our first event on this brand new campus as our chief keynote speaker and our chief guest. So this means a lot to me personally.
Thank you.
And you have always been very kind, but today you've taken out time on a weekday to come here. We are so happy. We are so proud. We cannot express it in words. I'm sure that when you took that little walk with us, the sentiment carried through, ma'am.
I'm sure, yes.
Thank you. Ma'am, I wanted to start this conversation by thanking you on behalf of every fellow Indian for what you have done as a leader. And I'm sure I speak for everyone in the room, I'm sure, do I not? For the fortitude, strength, the calm, and the solidity that you have brought to the office of Union Finance Minister, which has seen so many illustrious predecessors in the past and held the country's hand through this extremely difficult and tough times of COVID, and been such a strong support in the Modi government. So may I please request another round of applause before I get to the questions.
Thank you.
I was asked by everyone that before you speak to her, express our gratitude to her. So on behalf of everyone, I think we need to do that.
Thank you.
Nirmala ji, a broad question to start with. How do you view India's economic and financial prospects as you begin the third term of the Modi government?
I think each one of us can be confident and be sure that because of a good visionary leadership which saw through India through the difficult times and has the vision to take it forward with destinations expressed clearly. Not we're going along, we will reach. No, clearly what is it in the next 2 years? What is it in the next few more years? And what is it that we want to do by 2047? With that kind of a visionary leadership, which is strong in a sense, inside the person, the strength of bearing with the challenges and also the kind of demands that come off, that is the strength I'm talking about of a leadership. And you find that in Prime Minister Modi, and I will say this up front before I even open up this conversation with Arnab. A leader of that nature, keeping a team of people working with him, gives the confidence to the ordinary citizen that you are in safe hands, we will work hard, there shall not be any corruption, we are clear where we want to go along with you. It's not a dream of the leader alone. People are also resonating that voice. So to be in that team, I feel very humbled and honored. And all the praise that Arnab might give me, saying, this is what you brought to this position, this is what you did. It's a big team under Prime Minister Modi. And it is that team which is delivering it. And I don't think personally and individually I am doing some miracle. No, it's a large team and a very firm leadership which says, let's go together. If there are little challenges, if there are, criticism, we'll take it in our stride. But it is that leadership, therefore, which gives me the confidence to tell you here as an answer to this question. We as Indians can be confident that we are being very clearly taken through a phase which is full of challenges. And it is only because of that in the last few years, and it is only because of that in the coming few years, not just my assessment, global observers of Indian economy have very clearly said, India is growing as the fastest growing large economy. It shall continue to be that next year. It shall continue to be that for the next year after that as well. These are not words which I'm putting here. And therefore, The one thing which I would say, even Arnab was asking me as I was walking here, saying you went to Mexico, you went to US, what is up? The first thing I will tell you, whilst Indian citizens are confident in the leadership, Indian citizens have voted Prime Minister Modi back for the third term because they want stability, they want good governance, they want a leadership which will place India above all. There are, of course, within India, voices which pull down our confidence. I don't know if I've said this once in
Briefly,
Arnab's
yes.
own program. Sorry, I'm giving you a very big answer for
No,
this
I'm
question.
listening very keenly, ma'am.
In the Mahabharata,
Yes.
you would have heard how Karna's confidence was brought down only by Khan Barna, the chap who was with him as his Rathasarathi. By mistake came this side. He was meant to be there along with the Pandavas, but by mistake he's here. But he tells Karna, "Arey, you won't win, yeah. You can't achieve this. You are not capable. Who are you fighting against?" And again, continuously pouring that negativity, continuously pouring that pessimism, hurt Karna's self-confidence. He was as good as a warrior as Arjuna was. But that one draining of the confidence of Karna also contributed. I'm not saying that was the only reason, but also contributed to the less than great performance of Karna himself. Now I'm bringing that example to say, while the whole world observes India, that against severe odds, which are globally everybody facing odds, not just India, India's own challenges are also there for us. We are somehow, along with the people's strength, moving forward with a clear leadership, stable policies, good taxation structure. Yes, we can do more for middle class. But with all this, we are able to move. But within India, there are many shalyas. So that brings your confidence down. I would appeal to everybody, observed by everybody. So I would appeal through your program, Arnab, in answer to your first question, we need to have confidence in ourselves. There's a good leadership. There's a great understanding of how to take India forward. There will be challenges. There are questions about, no, burden is more on me, burden is less on them. We'll address all of them. But be confident that we are going the right path. We will achieve the destinations.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm so well started by you. And in fact, I do think that as we go from 3.7, 3.8, 5 trillion, 10 trillion, I always say this, and whenever I get a chance to the younger generation, they never take your growth for granted.
Yes.
And you told me this once when we met last time in the finance ministry, and you said that everything, Arnab, is well thought out. Do not assume that our policy post-Ukraine, I can share this with your permission. I was having a little informal conversation with the finance minister, and she told me that everything of our country's position on economic issues during and after the start of the Ukraine crisis was very, very well thought out. And the only thing that mattered for the Prime Minister was national interest, and national interest alone. Madam Finance Minister, now we are in a slightly different situation, and we have to, I believe, prepare for a post-Ukraine situation as well. We have a new president in the US, president-elect, who has committed to ending the war within 24 hours. Even if it doesn't, it's almost seen as a certainty that it will end. My question to you is, what will the post-Ukraine economy look like? We have done very well in this period during the trajectory of the war. Should the trajectory of the war change? And because we took certain decisions, like we became the second largest buyer of Russian crude oil. Our refined oil exports went up massively to Europe. Our exports of fuels like diesel to the EU surged by 50-60%. We benefited from that. A follow-up question is, and what every observer will want to know, Madam Finance Minister, is, should the war end? Should the trajectory of the war in Ukraine end? How does our economic policies, how do our fiscal policies, and how does our approach to the world change after that? Will we have to do some resetting?
See, I think it is not just the Ukraine war, even very many other developments which happen and which keep happening make us continuously be dynamic in our decision making and keep resetting.
Yes.
So it's not as if we are waiting for that one day when peace is going to come on Ukraine and therefore we are going to change and reset ourselves. Reset happens like in many small steps continuously, and it's an ongoing thing. But the first thing first, Ukraine war is something which PM has also said, we want peace, we want talks, we want, normalcy restored and so on.
Absolutely.
We are always in favor of peace and diplomatic solutions to problems. We've never promoted aggression. We've never promoted unilaterally aggression. And therefore, on that ground, there is no change. We continue to keep that. But post the war, or post any other situation, post the US elections,
yes,
and the kind of results which have come, as always, you asked me about reset. I'm using
yes,
the word consciously. As always,
yes,
we'll keep India's interest on the top. So
wonderful.
That's the reset. And that is the reset each time on doing things, but each time we keep India on the top, India's interest on the top.
Yes. In that follow-up to that question, you recently came back from Mexico and then you had meetings in Washington, very, very recently. One particular comment of yours I found very interesting, and it's in the context of putting national interest first. If I may quote, you said that while we welcome business and investment in India, I think you said this in Washington, there must be safeguards in place given India's sensitive neighborhood. And now we need as much FDI inflow as we want. We can get 100 billion, we can get a 150 billion, it will still not be enough. How do you balance, for example, the economic potential of welcoming Chinese investments or investments from other countries with the imperative of maintaining our national security interests and our economic sovereignty as well? Because your comment was seen in that context. If you can please elaborate on that.
Yes, certainly, because FDIs come from different parts of the world. And FDI coming from the last known destination may not be the destination from where that FDI springs up, if I can use that word. FDI coming from the last known destination can also be from so many different other sources coming via that destination. Your national interest being what it is, you want to be sure, ultimately, where is it coming from? And there's no compromise here. We are not making trouble to any investment which wants to genuinely come in India and be invested in India and create jobs in India. We want those investments, but we also want that so-called screen behind the investment source also to be opened up. We'd like to go through the screen and say, where exactly is it coming from? Let's understand it.
Yes.
We're not stopping anybody. We want, actually, we are inviting people to come and invest in India. Where else would you have a law-abiding society, jurisprudence and everything common law-based, which everybody knows? Delays may happen in the courts, but you get your justice, and in a transparent fashion. Youth who are very skilled, who can contribute to production. The growing middle class, which has the purchasing power and therefore a captive domestic market. So what better for an FDI compared to anywhere else? So FDIs are invited, we want more of it, but we also want to be sure that who indeed is bringing that investment.
Ma'am, every word of yours is watched very closely nowadays, ma'am. And I can say this, that even when she was spokesperson of the BJP, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman never spoke a word out of place. And as Union Finance Minister, she's measuring every word, because every comment here will be measured by the markets, companies, private sector and foreign investors. So she said something which I think has great significance. I don't know if you saw the recent comment of Vladimir Putin about the Indian economy. Did you see that a few days back, what he said? He said, Nirmala ji, that India deserves, this Vladimir Putin, I think a couple of days back, viral story, India deserves to be considered a global superpower. according to Mr. Putin, and he cited India's fast-growing economy and our ancient culture. So I think this is an incredible statement coming in, and it's an expression of his belief. Do you think the world will respond to us differently as we grow? I always wonder about it. Now we may be an object of interest and investment, then curiosity, then competition, and then people think it might get ugly. Will it always be possible, in your view, for India to navigate on one course without being attached to a bloc? This question in my mind in the context of our dramatic decisions vis-a-vis Russia after Ukraine. Can we continue to be non-aligned? And if so, how far? We have leaders like Trump coming in who believe in building tariffs, who say anyone out there who attempts de-dollarization, I will put 100% tariff on them. Very, very protectionist, very aggressive. So will things change? Again, it's a follow-up of the previous question, but will things change in your view?
I'm not sure we'll ever in India change from being non-aligned. The expression may change. You're not going to be able to explicitly be with one group of nations as opposed to another group of nations. You are going to constantly keep friends everywhere. You need to keep friends everywhere. And why, pray, should you do that? Whether it is unipolar world, bipolar world, or multipolar world as we face now, India's given position and India's inherent belief and our geopolitical location necessitates us to be consistent in one thing, that you recognize you have friends everywhere. Circumstances may change, but your friendship and alignment with each one of them should continue. You cannot, at the cost of becoming indifferent or even alienating some group, become closer to something else or some groups else. So I think that is a position which has served India well, and it will also in the future serve us well. Your bilateral is equally important as much as your multilateral. So that position, I think, has served us well, and it will continue to serve us well.
May I follow up? In Washington, during that panel discussion recently on the Bretton Woods institutions' priorities in the next decade, I think that was the subject of your panel discussion. One comment of India's finance minister got quoted a lot, where you said, and I quote, that no country, and we feel proud when we hear you talk like this, where Ms. Sitharaman, you said in Washington that no country, whether the US or China, can ignore India's growing influence. Now again, with Donald Trump returning to office, his stance on trade and tariffs will be a big factor in Indo-US relations, Ms. Sitharaman. Right from 2018, Trump has been describing India as a very, very, very tough negotiator. He calls us a big abuser of tariffs. He has tremendous praise for the Prime Minister. He speaks so warmly of him, but at the same time, in the next sentence, he says India is a big abuser on tariffs. Now, in September 2024, he reiterated that India imposes heavy tariffs. Given these statements, how do you see our country navigating potential challenges on Trump's tariff policies? Will we climb down? Or can we hold our own? Because we have to protect our economic interests, but we also have to protect our geostrategic relationship with the United States. If you can elaborate on that, ma'am.
Well, I think one thing is very clear. If, under the leadership of the Prime Minister, we were able to navigate during COVID and immediately after COVID, when the challenges were like never seen before. They were not challenges which you had experienced earlier. You found a solution earlier. So there was a lot of effort to explain where India is coming from. The simple example of the Russian oil.
Yes.
The simple example of COVID time measures. The simple example of vaccinations which came from abroad, which required 1,000 conditions to be met.
Yes.
And imagine the conflict, the dharma sankata of a Prime Minister. He wants to give vaccination to our people at the earliest, The process of getting our own vaccines ready is taking a bit more time. In the meanwhile, the temptation is that we can get the vaccines from outside, but it came with so many conditions. Were you ready to compromise on those conditions and get them? It's a different story that those vaccinations and their human fitness, as they say, are being questioned now. I'm not talking with the benefit of that doubt which is there. I'm not talking from that, advantage of a future looking back at the past. But at that time, the Dharma Sankata that he faced, but made sure that we brought in something which was adept for Indian use, with India's own. These are not decisions which would have gone down well with many people outside. But he had the, if anything, that the strength of the inner self of the person, that quality of that leader, who could go sit, look into eye of the opponent and say, no, please, we are doing this because of this reason. And it stood by us like a rock. The decisions have served us. And that is what is going to be carried forward as well. So even with the US case that you're putting before me, and about the tariffs, and that we've been accused of being abuser of the tariffs that we use, it is possible to explain every tariff that we have levied. It's not to control imports. But yet, do I have a responsibility towards the companies, for instance, in India, the capacities that is existing in India to produce some goods, and we go about importing those goods or those goods in broken down fashion and then reassemble them? Do we have a moral authority to kill or nip in the bud those who are growing in India and who can produce in India? I need to give that protection for them as well. As much as I have to encourage industries which need those imports. Imports are required. Intermediary goods are required to be imported. I will have to encourage that. I will lift the tariffs on them, provided it doesn't, intended or unintended, hurt my own capacity to produce. I have to balance the two.
Very important. Ma'am, it's a very important statement that you've made out here. I think this itself will make headlines, and I think I commend you for this thinking, because, in the early 90s, liberalization was good, but I personally, we as reporters saw certain industries like drugs and pharmaceuticals go through a tsunami that they were not prepared for. And it's not necessary that the foreign alternative is always the better alternative. It may be the cheaper alternative. It's not always the better alternative. So I think there's a great lesson in what you said there. You were talking about insights. Our entire audience here would like a little bit of how the functioning in the government works. And I'm sure you can share a little bit, maybe 1%, 10% of, and I can take the liberty with you, which others may not be able to. How is the thinking with the Prime Minister, with you, when you sit for cabinet meetings? They just give us the inner view of how the decision making is happening. I'm sure Prime Minister has a clear target. And you said the inner thinking, the strategy he has. How do the decisions get taken? And what is that eye of the fish out there? As Arjuna hit the eye of the fish. What is the eye of the fish for the government, for the Modi government in term 3? Would we want a slightly broader, non-technical question I'm asking, with I can, if you don't mind, share that. How is it happening?
Well, first of all, no decision is taken in one sitting.
Achha.
No decision is taken with just one meeting. No decision is taken only with a few people who give their inputs. The vast expanse of people who have anything to do with it are brought into the discussion forum.
Okay.
May not be in one sitting, but in several sittings. One group is heard, another group is heard, third group is heard. All their inputs are again thrashed around. So the hearing stage of it, every opinion is heard. And I don't need to say to you for the first time, I'm sure I'm not saying it for the first time, many people must have told you, the Prime Minister's one quality which is amazing is he hears you without any disturbance.
Yeah, he's a great
There's
listener.
no phone call, there's no, all right, I've heard this 1,000 times, stop it. None of that. He hears you out, he hears you out. And there are times when you go back thinking, oh my God, I shouldn't have said this. Because he has not responded to you, but you know he already knows it, or he thinks that, oh, what a foolish argument. But no, he never says any of that. He hears you out in full. So no decision is taken in one round. No decision is taken with just a few people. So, rounds and rounds of discussion, and in all that, he sits through patiently. Second, after all the discussion is carried forward, again one set of consultation, not at his level, at the level of the PMO officials who have the domain knowledge. And finally, when it is all drafted into some kind of a written form, the language is gone through, so that there is no loose wording which will be subject to any kind of misinterpretation. And after that is when it actually comes to the cabinet. And before the cabinet, the Prime Minister has gone through the document and comes fully seized of what is in it. But even then, he doesn't stop the ministers from discussing, hey, no, but you said this, what's about it? Cross-consultation, discussion, questioning one another happens, and only then a final call is taken. But at every stage, and I'm saying this because I truly think so, believe so, and at every stage, he's done his homework. There are times when you probably are going with less homework done, but he's done his homework.
So this is a very difficult situation for those presenting to him. I've often been told that, but he comes to the nub of the issue.
Yes.
Nub of the issue, and he focuses on that nub of the issue, which is an incredible gift. What an achievement you've had. Can I share some numbers? I feel people keep talking about 5 trillion, 6 trillion, 10 trillion. Can I share 2-3 numbers which I think are the real achievements of the Modi government? We have such fantastic audience here today. Inflation, then and now. Then 8.2% CAGR of inflation between 04 to FY14. Now 5% CAGR of inflation between 14 to 23. I don't have this year's latest numbers. FDI, then 305 billion. Now I think it is almost 600 billion were the last. But I think the incredible thing, Aman, for startups, 350 as of 2014 and 1,40,803. Now, this is just open it up. And I feel if there was a theme, it would be just unleash. I think all we have to do in this country, Nirmala ji, is unleash. Don't you see that?
That's right.
Haven't you seen a change in the recent times as well? You know, then there were 5 cities with metro rail. Today we have 24 cities with metro rail. I'm told they're going to go over 50 soon. 70 airports, 140 airports, 200 in the future. So we are headed towards explosive growth. What will we have to change in our government systems to adjust to that change of growth? The question is, the country will go from 3 to 4 to 30 faster than we expect. We'll be more urbanized. I heard today 50% urbanization. Transport systems will change. Aspirations will change. Now my question is, what do you, in your view, in the government systems, the regulations, the systems, and you spoke recently about, you had a great meeting, by the way, recently about amending of the IT Act, which was also one of the promises you had in your budget. And I was so impressed to see you do a follow-up meeting on what you did. Finance ministers often don't do. Ms. Sitharaman, broad question, and every audience member wants to know, we will grow. How will the government have to change vis-a-vis the citizens in terms of systems, regulations, and way of handling things?
I'll say something but which I don't want to get misunderstood, but I will say it and therefore I'll explain it also. The tendency, I suppose it's inherited from the British time and also the 70 years, is to be cautious. The tendency again is also to be careful that you're not letting out too much. Somewhere giving you the feeling that the trust on the citizen is less and the trust on the administration is more. The trust on the citizen is what Prime Minister Modi wants completely shifted in favor of the citizen. And in that, every measure you take is still requiring of more measures to be taken, and we are doing that. But sometimes it does happen that you've gone 2 steps forward, but for some reason you come 1 step backward. In the 10 years, that has been the one thing on which sometimes I think the attitude of the government and the attitude of the voting public and those who don't even vote is that this relationship should be on trust basis. Government should trust its citizens. Prime Minister Modi is fully in favor of that. All of us are making our efforts for it. But I can't say the work is done. It's probably requires a lot more to be done. That when we prepare ourselves for a policy or a policy shifting or a tweaking of some policy, that should be the overriding consideration. It doesn't come first, it comes on asking. So that is the constant change that we'll have to keep working. It's happening more nowadays than before, but it needs to happen every time. That's where the work is.
Ma'am, I can tell you the citizens also trust the government. And for any country to grow in the direction we are taking now, we need continuity. I hope I'm not misunderstood. I'm not making a political comment. But the biggest danger to any country is your perspective, and the other perspective appears too far left, if you can call it that, though I don't think the people who push it are leftists really. But the fear of continuity, we need continuity. Everywhere I speak to business leaders, Nirmalaji, we need continuity. And I think people do trust the government to provide that continuity, which takes me to my next question. Now I again take you back to the global scenario, and it's ironical and beautiful at the same time that nowadays an interview with the finance minister is 70% on global issues, because that's the way the world is moving. Honorable Finance Minister, recent reports have suggested there is a growing global trend towards de-dollarization. The US dollars in global reserves declined to 54% in Q4 2023. It was 70% in the early 2000s. China has also been actively promoting its currency as a possible alternative to the US dollar in global trade. And I have already told you, Trump is very aggressive on this. He says, you promote that, I'm going to build a huge financial wall in the United States against you. In the light of these developments and the need for de-dollarization, for a balancing factor in the world, how do you view India's role in this shift? Are we actively exploring alternatives? Should we do that? This was also a subject that had been picked up in the recent BRICS meeting, but it was not really followed through. How do you view this trend and potential of de-dollarization, and will it safeguard India's financial interests in a possibly de-dollarized global economy?
I look at this debate of de-dollarization from the point of view of how the global south has to help one another, how emerging economies will have to safeguard their positions in terms of global reserve currencies, and also how developed countries themselves today, either because of recession or because of lack of demand within their societies, are facing a challenge of different order. So when you're talking about the larger de-dollarization debate, I'm looking at India setting a different track with countries which don't have a huge dollar reserve. Yes. For instance, in Africa, quite a few countries, because of our ties with them, diaspora, British rule, yes, we've had this tie with many African countries, particularly the East African. We do have a lot of cooperation with them. We have lines of credit given to them so that they can have their development projects built through the funds which India gives them at concessional rates. We do all this, but there is a point in time in the recent past, we've had many of them unable to pay back even the concessional loan given to them because they don't have dollars to return it. So now, because we can't just leave them there, not because we want our money back, but because the fact that Global South has to do the hand-holding for itself. We'll have to help them, they'll have to be with us, and so on. So we have now started doing this exercise of talking to countries which want to have a rupee relationship.
Yes.
So we allow them to use rupees, pay us back in rupees, and also fund them in certain activities. So this rupee with the local currency is a method through which many of the small country relationships that we have continues. Similarly, with Russia, it's not for the first time. Earlier, there was a rupee-ruble trade, but the terms that time was different, and now what is happening with Russia is very different. It is possible to have some kind of a, give and take, trade sense with Russia, dealing in rupee and ruble. There are many other countries who are looking at, because of the way in which we've integrated our UPI, if not in every brick, but at least in some elements of the stack, we've had connection with UPI and with many other countries through the UPI. Even there, you're able to see that they're willing to integrate with you through their currency or with the rupee. So, not just rupee. You find in every region, regional arrangements with regional currencies now being worked up so that the regional trade arrangements don't collapse for want of dollars. So to that extent, de-dollarization is inadvertently or not hitting at the dollar, but promoting things happening with non-dollar currencies. So India too has done this with many countries with whom we've had traditional relationship. With Russia, for instance, and so on. So there are countries through which now UPI payments are enabling payments through digital mode. Even there, it may not be in dollars. So very many ways in which you can address and answer the question on de-dollarization, but not with a goalpost of, are we dismantling the dollar? Are we putting rupee in the place? No, not that. There are so many things happening.
What you're saying is we are not against anyone, but we are for ourselves, and nobody can question that.
And we can't deny countries their development aspirations just because they don't have dollar reserve.
True. Can I ask you a personal question? You seem to be, and you are, a very deep strategic thinker in your policies. You've presented so many budgets. When there is a shallow political argument against you, like when Rahul Gandhi said that how many people from which caste are in the halwa ceremony, a lot of the people in the audience, they were not amused, they were baffled at the nature of the question that was put to you, because you're a serious person, and running a finance ministry, being finance minister of India is serious business. You don't wake up and think about political issues all the time. How do you respond to it? You've been through personal attacks, people have underestimated your ability, you've every time come out strong, but when, after all these years, that kind of an argument was put, when an attempt was made to pull you into what I call caste card politics, what goes on in your mind? Because there's a politician also somewhere. So, but
I also think, other than attempting to pull me down, he's doing a disservice for the cause that he pretends to take up.
Why so?
In this case, for instance, talking about halwa, talking about how many scheduled castes are there, how many OBCs are there. If you're really intending to serve the cause of scheduled castes, it's not a halwa ceremony on which you'll question that.
That's true.
You'll do so much more to help the cause of really scheduled castes and OBCs, rather than say, during the halwa, if you had 5 fellows belonging to OBCs or SCs or STs, you've served the cause. Somewhere, I feel the people who are around him, helping him, are not putting the gravity of issues.
True. And the challenge.
Before he takes it up. One, it doesn't matter to me whether he wants to undermine me or pull me down. I'll stand up with my defense. But the cause that for which you're pretending to take up, I remember that Batta per soul sometime in 2011-12. You went in favor of the farmers. Tell me, what are you doing for farmers? And look at the way in Karnataka, the Congress party has helped, directly or indirectly, people to claim farmers' lands in the name of Waqf board. Where is the Congress party and where is Batta per soul? Where is Rahul Gandhi when it comes to Karnataka's farmers? So the gravity of the cost that he takes is momentary. That minute I ask and I forget. Move to the next. He's just not gathering any moss. He's just moving. So for me, the worry is India's opposition. And I'm sorry to say this, I'm not trying to pull down anybody. India's opposition needs leaders who can stand up in the parliament and question the government.
Oh, yes.
Do stand up.
That's so amazing.
And make sure that people feel, well, as opposition, look at the way the government is put on the mat by the leaders of the opposition. No, now they're saying even within 6 months after Lok Sabha election, we're close to, tantalizingly close to 100 Congress got. And thought from 55, if I went to 100, people are with me. Yes, people are with you for being in the opposition, but you're not doing that job. You're talking on halwa one day, you're talking on youth another day, you're taking a copy of the constitution when the chairman says you're not supposed to hold anything in your hand. No pictures, no placards, no books, no whatever. But you're doing all these. And you're often seen sitting like this in the house.
That's true.
Excuse me.
Yeah, like this, something like,
I'm sorry, I don't want to dramatize it.
No, it's the truth.
I want an opposition leader who sits to ask the question.
Oh, yes.
So the moment he gets up, all of us should say, oh my God, let's see what he's going to ask now.
That's the point.
You're sort of making... What can I say?
I know, we need an opposition.
Yes, we need
an opposition.
Who can speak for those who want to question the government.
Yeah. They say there's a quote, a rolling stone gathers no moss. Rahul Gandhi is going to think he's very cool. He's like a member of the Rolling Stones band, given what you said. But less said, the better, Let me just change the subject there, ma'am. But on a serious note, you have opposition state governments which are in trouble. How does the center view them? The BJP goes for the kill on them. Like Himachal Pradesh, they say there's a toilet tax nowadays. And there was another controversy recently on the samosas that were meant for the chief minister were consumed by someone else. It's silly issues. Then Karnataka has a fairly interesting deficit. And we had Mr. Siddharamaiah actually give advice with DK Shivakumar sitting next to him that next time you make promises, please think whether you have the money for it. Problem, Mr. Kharge doesn't realize there are cameras everywhere. He was recorded saying that. We debated it at night. We keep looking for these issues also. Now, are you a little too tough with the state governments? Ms. Sitharaman, if you don't mind my asking you, because all of them point their fingers at you. All these chief ministers, they point their fingers at Prime Minister, of course, but they point their fingers at you saying, Nirmala Sitharaman, Finance Ministry, allocation of funds, Niti Aayog, they have complaints everywhere that we are not being given what are... So what if we give freebies? It's our policy. Government should support us long term, etc. Bengal, Mamata Banerjee, all of them. So how much truth is there in that comment that there's a little bit of...
Not one bit of truth.
Are you sure of that?
I'm sorry to sound so aggressive on
No, I like you aggressive. You're no longer aggressive. When you were spokesperson, you were very aggressive. Nowadays, you've become far less aggressive. But please, we like the aggressive Nirmala Sitharaman on top of this.
Arnab will be the first fellow to say, what is this finance minister? She doesn't contain. She can't take it.
No, please.
She shouts. She gets aggressive. And look at Gautam Gambhir. He's been told, why is he always confronted? He's a good cricketer. He's gone there to get to some order.
Amazing.
But even there we tell him, no, you can't be this, you can't be that. Like that I'll be told.
No,
you're not a spokesperson anymore. Why are you getting angry? Why are you giving answers like that? So I'm remaining quiet. But now you provoked me adequately.
And we want you to bat like Shrikant now, ma'am.
I'm honestly saying, and I repeat with my eyes wide open, looking into the very august audience.
Yes, ma'am.
There's not one element of truth in this, that the center is denying states their funds. Whichever state says it, I'll come and stand one-on-one to say this. It's not right. Because it may be a different story that they want more. They want more either because they're giving freebies or because they don't know to generate revenues, or they are not able to contain the loopholes, or they are not able to, look at newer ways of getting revenue. It may be anything. But to say that the center is denying them funds is absolute
Yes.
I was going to say nonsense. but
Yes, it's all right.
Maybe that's not
No,
right.
no, it's all right.
But baseless.
Yes.
See, the formulation of how much has to be given to a state for the next 5 years is decided by a finance commission, a constitution body.
Yes.
And if that body finally gives a report and that's accepted and post that the formulation is on the central government, we do it accordingly. There's no way I can have, oh, I like Madhya Pradesh more than Kerala, so cut down on Kerala, give Madhya Pradesh. Impossible. The system is completely fitted with mechanism that automatically every month the devolution happens. So that argument has been placed several thousand times, and there was one state which has taken us to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has also very clearly said you go amicably sort it out with the central government. On the larger issue of whether the central government should oversee the borrowings of the state, which is Article 293,
yes,
given in the Constitution, an authority to the central government, because sovereign guarantee is given by the central government for states' borrowings. And therefore, the central government is vested with authority to oversee borrowings of the states. And legitimate borrowing, let us say now 3% of their GSDP, cannot be denied and cannot be put under condition. I don't put conditions for you to borrow if it is within the 3% limit.
But Bengal, for example.
So whichever state, within your reasonable, permissible limit you borrow, nobody can say no. But beyond that, and aside from that, you create newer bodies,
yes,
which don't have the legitimacy to borrow, which don't account to the state assembly, whose revenues are not controlled by the assembly. If such bodies are made to borrow, and to them you give the right of your duties, meaning liquor policy, you have excise duties imposed on every bottle which is sold, and through that the revenue comes, and you have to come to the house, meaning assembly or the parliament, to say how much you earned. Now, suppose you transfer the right of the excise completely to this body which is not accountable in the assembly, and say the revenue earnings coming from the excise duty will go to this body, with that they'll pay the loan, and the borrowing is taken without any kind of restraint. CAG has pulled up states saying, what are you doing? This money which comes out of the excise duty should go to the assembly, should go into the budget, should be accounted for, and the vote sought in the house. If that is for the next 5 years siphoned off to this body which is not accountable to the assembly, CAG pulls it up. And we say, no, that is not allowed. That kind of a borrowing is not allowed, because we have the right to oversee these kind of borrowings also under Article 293. They then say, oh, the center is controlling me. Is this right in the first place? These kind of anomalies happened, highlighted by the CAG, questioned by the center, and then they make such noise to cover up these kind of wrongdoings. What is due to states, to any state, to every state, goes and goes in time. I will challenge in the 5 years that have been here, and so with Arun Jaitley's time. I will challenge if money has been delayed to any state. If you don't submit your certificate of utilization and then expect me to nevertheless give the money, obviously it won't happen. Submit your utilization in time, get your money in time. So there are so many.
So in Bengal, this utilization issue became a big issue in Bengal.
Yes.
Bengal has not given you utilization certificates.
That is the Manrega funds not going there.
But why should the people of Bengal suffer? Why should the people of Bengal suffer? Recently, Prime Minister got emotional in a scheme when he was announcing medical facility. And he said that I forgive the people of Bengal should forgive me because I am not able to serve them, because my schemes are not being allowed by Mamata Banerjee. And the Bengal government says, we don't need your scheme.
That's right.
Our scheme on health insurance is better than yours.
So
doesn't the person in Bengal just end up suffering because of it? What is the person's recourse then?
The citizen, whether in Bengal or in Tamil Nadu, have no fault of theirs.
Yes.
They are not at fault. But when state governments politicize such things,
yes,
and they don't allow schemes of the central government to reach the state citizens. It's unfortunate that the citizens don't benefit. Tamil Nadu, I'm purposely bringing that on board, PM Vishwakarma Yojana. To benefit 18 such people, barbers, boat makers, fish net makers, masons, what is their caste? Who asked their caste?
Absolutely.
Whereas in Tamil Nadu, the politicians there, the government there, distorts it by saying Vishwakarma is a jati. You are giving it to the jati. What understanding of jati is this? And what understanding of the Vishwakarma scheme is this? When we have named 18 different activities, even if you look at the jati, are all these 18 in one jati? First of all, jati, the varnan itself is wrong. And there they've denied by giving a false argument saying PM Vishwakarma is a jati-based scheme. It's not. 18 different types of skills with which ordinary people are working. We are trying to give them skills, we are trying to give them kits, we are trying to give them some payments, and we are also extending subsidized loans so that they can build their occupation better. Tamil Nadu denies. Bengal denies on Manrega. You can see, and Ayushman Bharat is denied.
Yes.
It is purely out of this jealousy that all people, common people-friendly schemes of the central government are reaching the ground, and they don't want to recognize the good work which is being done by Prime Minister Modi's schemes.
Okay, I know you have a busy schedule. I'll take one question. You have a long journey as well, but one question which everyone wants to ask you, ma'am. You are making changes to the IT Act. On the tax issue, what can people expect broadly? I'm sure this question on tax is on everyone's mind. We are told there are changes being made, improvements being made on the IT Act. Some people talk of tax terrorism. I can see people smiling. Rasisha is smiling. Everybody's looking for that answer from you. What can broadly, whatever you can share at this stage, because you are doing some deep dive consultations, what can people expect on the tax front and the IT Act, ma'am?
I've said this in the budget. It is completely to simplify the IT Act. You know the IT Act as a book, if you want to refer, you're referring to a tome like this. And there are always clause, sub-clause, explanatory, facilitation, enabling clause, and so on. We want to make it downright simple so that there is no room for misinterpretation. We want the language to be simple. We also don't want too many conditions and caveats. So the rewriting in a way of the IT Act, which has been pending for some time now,
yes.
We all talked about the direct taxation code and so on. So the work is going on to make sure it is completely brought down to the at most simple way of handling. One thing I want to make very clear, at the time when I proposed it in the last budget, it was to make the language simple so that it can be complied with straightforward, no questions asked. And even at that time, I didn't talk about rates being brought into this simplification. Because rate is something which I have to go to the budget and also through the budget to the parliament. Simplification is already gone through in the parliament saying, yes, you have to simplify. But rate will be a subject of a budget and never a subject of such discussions. So here, I'm not indicating that yes, I'm changing, or I'm not indicating no, I will not change any rate, tax rate for the income tax. But I just want to say, because you talked about this particular thing, it is for simplifying so that compliance is not a burden, so that officers at the local level, in the field level, don't subject taxpayers to wrong interpretation and harass them. Don't quote certain sections which are almost dormant to harass them. Remove that element of rent seeking completely so that it becomes simple.
Well, that I think we all appreciate. And we appreciate your time today. And I think this intimate gathering, where there's so many headlines today we've got from you.
Thank you.
Once again, without overstating at all, let me say we are very proud of our finance minister for her leadership and for being an example of true leadership in government. A round of applause for you. I think they're giving you a standing ovation, ma'am, and we are very grateful for your time, ma'am. Very, very grateful. Very, very grateful. Thank you so much.